Right now, literally suspended over your roof is a multi-ton lever that is, well, it's just waiting for an excuse to snap.
Yeah, which is a terrifying thought when you actually stop and look up.
Right. I mean, we tend to view the trees in our yards almost like, outdoor furniture. Just a nice bit of shade, or maybe some green to break up the neighborhood skyline.
Oh, absolutely. It's just part of the scenery.
Exactly. But you are actually sharing your property with a living, breathing structure. And it's constantly negotiating its own survival against gravity and extreme weather, all while looming directly over your living room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, arboriculture, which is the professional cultivation and management of trees, is fundamentally about managing a plant's energy.
Right. Energy and structure.
Exactly. It's about maintaining structural integrity against those relentless forces of nature. It's an ongoing, active negotiation with physics and biology.
And decoding that negotiation is our mission for you today on this deep dive. We're drawing on a fascinating, highly detailed guide from Palmetto Tree.
Yeah, they're a premier horticultural provider.
Right. Operating right in the thick of the extreme Florida climate, which is no joke.
Definitely not.
So we're going to explore why cutting a branch is actually, well, it's a form of biological surgery, and how understanding the hidden mechanics of a tree's canopy can literally save your property from catastrophic damage.
It's a complete perspective shift.
It really is. So let's start with a fact from this guide that completely shattered my assumptions. Because when I go out with a pair of clippers to tidy up a tree, I assume I'm just giving it a haircut.
Right, just a quick trim.
Exactly. But the text treats every single cut as a severe medical event for the plant.
Well, a haircut is the wrong mental model entirely because, hair is dead tissue, right?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
When you cut a branch, you are severing living vascular tissue. You are performing surgery.
Oh.
And just like in human surgery, the precision of the incision determines whether the patient recovers or, well, spirals into infection.
So it's literally an open wound.
Exactly. A tree's vascular system is its circulatory network. It's a complex plumbing system of phloem and xylem, basically transporting water up from the roots and sugars down from the leaves.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the guide gets extremely specific about where this surgery takes place. It mentions hitting the wrong section of the branch collar.
Right.
Is that a literal bump on the tree? Like, how does a piece of wood frantically try to heal like a human would?
So the branch collar is exactly that. It's a swollen ring of tissue at the base of a branch right where it connects to the trunk.
Okay, I can picture that.
It contains highly specialized cells. Now, trees don't heal the way humans do.
They don't.
No, not at all. When we get a cut, our cells regenerate and replace the damaged tissue. Trees don't regenerate, they compartmentalize.
Compartmentalize. What does that mean for a tree?
They physically build chemical and physical walls around the wound to seal it off. It's all about preventing decay from spreading into the heartwood of the trunk.
So if a cut is jagged, or if you slice flush against the trunk and remove that swollen collar entirely.
You've essentially destroyed the tree's ability to build that protective wall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you've left the vascular system wide open to the elements. So instead of putting its resources into growing deeper roots or thicker branches, the tree suddenly has to divert massive amounts of critical energy into frantically trying to seal a poorly executed wound.
But hold on, if I cut my lawn in half, the grass grows back thicker and healthier.
Right. Turf is different.
Yeah. Why are massive trees so much more delicate than my turf?
Yeah.
Because the instinct for most homeowners is, hey, this oak is getting way too big. Let's just chop it down to a manageable size.
Well, turf grass grows from the base, the crown, which is protected at ground level. Trees grow from the tips of their branches.
Oh, right.
More importantly, we have to look at the dietary reality of a tree. Leaves aren't just decoration. They are the tree's food factory.
Like solar panels.
Exactly. Thousands of tiny solar panels. If you arbitrarily hack away at the canopy, you are essentially shutting down the kitchen.
You are severing the energy supply, which brings up this specific threshold experts use, known as the 25% rule.
Ah, yes, the golden rule.
Yeah, the guide states that removing more than 25% of the live canopy in a single season is an absolute red line.
It stresses the plant to the point of severe decline, mostly because of an invisible underground pipeline.
The roots.
Exactly. The root system relies entirely on the carbohydrates produced by those leaves during photosynthesis.
So if you remove more than a quarter of the food factories,
the roots literally begin to starve. And when roots don't get fed, they die back.
which makes sense.
Right. And when the root system shrinks, it can no longer absorb enough water to sustain the remaining canopy above ground. It just becomes this cascading failure.
So by trying to make a tree smaller and seemingly safer by hacking it back, you might actually be starving it to death.
You're killing the foundation to save the roof.
Wow. And if chopping a tree starves its roots, those roots weaken. A weakened root system brings up a terrifying physical reality when you consider how much these structures actually weigh.
The sheer mass is incredible.
Yeah, which makes where we cut incredibly important for the physical stability of the tree.
Structural integrity is arguably the single most important element of long-term plant health. And the physics start playing a critical role the moment the tree is just a young sapling.
Right, so the text highlights a phenomenon called codominant stems.
Yes, very common issue.
Basically, when a young sapling grows, sometimes it develops two trunks of similar size that grow up right next to each other. They're packed super tightly together in a giant V shape.
Yeah, and while it might look perfectly symmetrical and natural when the tree is small, that tight union between those two stems becomes a massive weak point over time.
Because of something called included bark?
Yes, included bark. Because the two trunks are growing so closely together, the bark on the inside of the V gets trapped as the stems expand.
Okay, so it gets pinched in there.
Exactly. So instead of solid wood fusing with solid wood, you just have two layers of bark pushing against each other.
So they aren't actually attached.
No, there is no actual structural connection holding them together, just pressure.
Wait, don't trees grow with codominant stems in the wild all the time? Why is it suddenly this urgent, catastrophic problem when it's sitting in a front yard?
Well, in a dense forest, trees are protected by each other from extreme wind. They grow tall and thin, just reaching for the canopy light.
Because they're crowded.
Right. And frankly, if a tree splits in a forest, it just becomes part of the ecosystem.
No one cares.
Exactly. But in an open front yard, that tree has no windbreak. It grows wider, heavier canopies. And here is the hidden mechanism of danger with those codominant stems.
Okay, I'm listening.
Water naturally collects right in that tight, bark-filled crevice between the two trunks.
It just pools there. And since there's no actual wood fusion, it seeps right down into the joint.
Yeah. It creates a perfectly dark, damp environment for anaerobic bacteria and fungi.
Which sounds like a recipe for a disaster.
It is. Over the years, these organisms break down the lignin and cellulose in the wood. It initiates this slow, invisible rotting process from the inside out, right at the tree's most critical structural apex.
So the wood turns to mush, completely unseen from the outside.
Exactly. You wouldn't even know it's happening until it fails.
To prevent that invisible rot, arborists intervene early to establish a single dominant leader trunk.
Right. They prune away the competing stem while the tree is young.
They're essentially engineering the tree to have one strong, solid spine. But this physics problem of weight and leverage obviously doesn't stop at saplings.
Oh, no, not at all.
Think about a mature oak or a heavy palm tree, especially down in Manatee County, Florida, where this guide is based.
The weight distribution on those mature specimens is just staggering. You have to visualize the center of gravity and really understand lever mechanics.
Right, so imagine holding a 20-pound dumbbell close to your chest. It's heavy, but your core supports it.
Easy enough.
Now imagine locking your arm and holding that same dumbbell straight out to the side.
Yeah, your shoulder's gonna scream.
And eventually, something is going to tear. Now apply that to a massive branch stretching 30 feet horizontally over a driveway.
It's terrifying. Gravity is pulling down on the end of it with hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds of force.
Just pulling at that one joint.
Every inch that heavy limb extends away from the trunk exponentially increases the leverage, tearing at the wood fibers where it attaches.
So under stress, the wood will simply snap.
It has to. Proper structural care is mathematically bringing that center of gravity back to the central axis. You want the weight bearing down vertically through the strong spine of the trunk and into the soil.
Rather than pulling violently to the side.
Exactly.
Because that lever is about to be put to the ultimate test. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the environmental stressors mentioned in the text get genuinely intimidating.
Florida weather does not mess around.
No, it doesn't. When we talk about weather testing a tree's center of gravity, visualize standing outside in a Category 3 hurricane. If you were holding a chain-link fence, the wind would push against the metal, but mostly flow through the gaps.
Right, it just passes right through.
But if you popped open a large umbrella, the force would instantly rip you right off your feet.
An overgrown, dense tree canopy acts exactly like that open umbrella.
It really does.
The text describes it as a sail catching the wind. When gale force winds hit a dense, unmanaged wall of leaves, the amount of kinetic energy transferred down that lever into the trunk and violently twisting the root system is unimaginable.
And what's concerning is how the specific, localized threats of the Florida climate compound that danger into a perfect storm. It's a trifecta of stress.
It really is.
First, you have the high humidity. We already talked about fungal rot and codominant stems, but that sticky, wet air means any untreated wound or dense, dark patch of leaves becomes an immediate breeding ground for decay.
Fungi thrive where moisture is trapped.
Right. And second, we have to look underground at the soil composition.
The sand.
Yeah, Florida soil is famously sandy, which means it has incredibly high porosity. Rainwater percolates through it almost instantly.
It just vanishes.
Because the water disappears so quickly into the aquifer, trees adapt by developing very shallow, widespread root systems just to catch the moisture at the surface before it's gone.
So they aren't anchoring deep into the bedrock like an oak might in, say, a northern clay soil.
Exactly. They're just spreading out right under the topsoil.
Which is a problem. Shallow roots make them inherently vulnerable, especially during the dry season when that sandy soil completely dries out, loses cohesion, and just becomes loose powder.
So you combine a shallow, horizontally spreading root system in loose sandy soil with the third threat, the arrival of severe tropical weather and high winds.
Right. If that dense canopy catches the hurricane winds like a sail and the roots are just sitting loosely in dry sand,
The whole structure acts as a giant lever that just pops the root ball right out of the ground.
it's devastating, which is why the critical takeaway for anyone managing a property in this kind of ecosystem is airflow. Arborists combat this sail effect by carefully thinning the interior branches.
So you aren't hacking off the outside to make it smaller.
No, not at all. You are meticulously hollowing out the internal density so that when extreme winds come, they pass freely through the canopy.
Much like wind through a chain link fence.
Exactly the same principle.
The guide makes it very clear that failing to manage this canopy density leads to splitting, uprooting, and ultimately complete tree removal.
Which nobody wants.
And let's be real, removing a massive fallen tree from a collapsed roof isn't just a tragedy for the plant. I mean, it is a highly disruptive, astronomically costly disaster.
It's a nightmare for the homeowner.
Preventative management is the only way to protect the property. But that means adapting the tree to survive this climate without violating that strict 25% biological limit we discussed earlier.
It requires a strategic toolkit. Professionals rely on a specific set of standardized pruning techniques to achieve this exact balance.
So let's turn this toolkit into a practical diagnostic scenario. Say I'm standing in my driveway looking up at a massive oak tree. How do I know what it actually needs?
Okay, let's break it down.
The guide outlines 4 specific pillars of pruning. The first tool is crown thinning.
Crown thinning addresses exactly what we were just discussing regarding airflow and the sail effect.
Hollowing out the inside.
Right. The primary objective is to selectively remove interior branches to increase light penetration and air circulation throughout the canopy.
Which also reduces the overall weight on those heavy lever arms, right?
Yes, it lowers the wind resistance and dramatically drops the fungal risk by letting the sun dry out the interior.
Why does the guide specify that the ideal timing for this in Florida is late winter to early spring?
Because the tree is generally in its dormant phase. The sap flow is lower, meaning the surgical wounds won't bleed as much energy.
Oh, that makes sense.
And insect activity is at its lowest, meaning pests are less likely to invade the fresh cuts before the tree can compartmentalize them.
So thinning is our internal structural cleanup. Tool number 2 is crown raising. Let's say my oak has branches dipping so low they scrape the top of my car when I pull in.
That is the exact use case. Crown raising is about creating vertical clearance.
Okay.
It involves removing the lowest branches to clear paths for pedestrians, vehicles, or to keep heavy limbs off a structure like your roof where they might cause friction damage.
And the guide says this is safe year-round. Why doesn't chopping off lower limbs trigger the same starvation panic in the vascular system?
Well, lower limbs are generally older and heavily shaded by the upper canopy.
So they aren't getting much sun anyway.
Exactly. They aren't producing nearly as much energy as the primary solar panels at the top of the tree. Removing them has a comparatively minimal impact on the plant's overall food supply.
So the tree can tolerate this procedure at almost any time of the year.
Yes, it's very low stress.
So that makes perfect biological sense. Now, tool number 3 is the one that comes with major flashing warning lights, crown reduction.
This is the danger zone.
Right.
Crown reduction is used to decrease the overall height and horizontal spread of a tree. It involves cutting the primary outward-reaching branches back to smaller lateral branches.
But wait, you're cutting away the most productive, sun-drenched leaves on the exterior.
You are.
You are directly attacking the 25% rule and the primary food factory.
Precisely. Because it removes such a significant portion of the tree's energy-producing foliage, it causes massive stress to the vascular system.
It is a severe shock.
It really is. Therefore, it requires absolute expert precision to ensure you are leaving enough foliage for survival. And it must only be performed during the dormant season when the tree's metabolic demands are at their lowest.
So no summer chopping.
No. If a crew heavily reduces a crown in the middle of a hot summer growing season, they will very likely kill the specimen.
Consider crown reduction the absolute red zone for your yard audit. Never let anyone just start chopping the top off your trees in July.
Definitely not.
Finally, we have the 4th tool, which is a universal green light deadwooding.
Deadwooding is the systematic removal of diseased, dying, or dead branches. It is highly beneficial at any time of the year.
Because deadwood isn't just ugly, it's a fungal highway.
Exactly. Deadwood has zero defenses. It cannot compartmentalize at all.
Because it's dead.
Right. It becomes a magnet for decay-causing fungi and wood-boring insects. If you leave a dead branch attached, those organisms will literally eat their way down the branch and straight into the healthy heartwood of the main trunk.
So by severing the deadwood, you physically cut off that avenue of infection.
You're removing the bridge.
I love that. So we have thinning to stop the sail effect, raising for vertical clearance, reduction for careful size control during dormancy, and deadwooding to stop decay in its tracks.
This raises an important question, though.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if we use this biological toolkit to secure the internal structure, making sure that the tree can survive the wind and the fungi, how does this massive organic entity actually integrate with the human environment we've built around it?
So what does this all mean for the actual design of your property?
Exactly.
The text makes a sharp distinction between trimming and shaping. Everything we just discussed, the health, the clearance, the storm prep that's trimming.
Correct.
Shaping is an entirely different discipline. Shaping is aesthetic training.
Trimming ensures the tree survives. Shaping ensures it harmonizes with the landscape architecture.
Okay, I see that.
Shaping involves deliberately training the exterior growth patterns of the branches to form a specific, visually pleasing silhouette.
The guide gives a highly relatable scenario for this. Say you just spent a small fortune designing and pouring a custom concrete driveway or laying high-end pavers.
Right. It looks immaculate.
But if you ignore the canopy, the surrounding foliage is going to act wildly. Low-hanging, erratic branches will obscure the sightlines of your expensive hardscaping.
Beyond just sightlines, unmanaged branches extending over hardscaping will constantly drop organic debris.
Like leaves and sap.
Leaves, sap, seeds, and berries. And those are all rich in tannins and natural dyes.
Oh, that's true.
When they sit on wet concrete or porous pavers, they leach those chemicals, creating permanent, deep-set stains that power washing often can't fully remove.
That would be infuriating. You invest heavily in the ground-level design, but the organic elements from above slowly ruin it.
Yep.
So shaping is how arborists train those exterior branches to deliberately frame the path, pulling the growth away from the surfaces to prevent staining.
And creating clean lines that guide the eye naturally across the landscape.
It's a technique particularly necessary for fast-growing ornamental varieties, right? Like privacy hedges or those focal point specimens in front yards.
Definitely. It elevates a simple plot of grass into a purposefully designed landscape. But to maintain that aesthetic and structural harmony, property owners really have to understand the specific timelines for proactive management.
Right. So how often does a homeowner actually need to be scheduling this kind of intervention?
The timeline depends entirely on the species' growth rate and mass. For your large, mature hardwoods, like those massive Florida oaks we talked about, you generally need a professional assessment every 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, okay.
Yeah, they grow slower, but when they do accumulate structural imbalances or heavy deadwood, the sheer mass makes them incredibly dangerous.
So 3 to 5 years for the heavy giants. What about the smaller, decorative stuff?
Fast-growing ornamental species, Privacy hedges, and certainly palms, require much more frequent attention.
Because they grow so quickly.
Right, because they push out new growth so rapidly, their center of gravity shifts faster, and their canopies become dense wind sails in a single season.
Just one season.
Just one. So they typically need to be assessed and shaped annually to maintain their design silhouette and to clear out the hazardous deadwood that accumulates much faster.
The overarching theme here is that proactive landscape management is not a luxury service. It is a critical necessity to protect the physical investments of your property.
It really is.
Ignoring the structural physics and biological realities of your trees inevitably leads to hazardous conditions that threaten your roof and, well, destroy your hardscaping.
You're setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. So let's take a step back and review this journey. We started by looking at a simple pair of clippers and realizing that an improper cut creates a microscopic vascular wound, forcing the tree to desperately build walls instead of growing roots.
A lot of wasted energy.
Right. Then we zoomed out to the slow, invisible fungal rot occurring inside the trapped bark of codominant stems. We visualized the immense leverage of a heavy branch stretching out horizontally over a driveway.
We examined the harsh mechanics of the Florida ecosystem, how sandy soil creates shallow roots, and how failing to thin the canopy turns the tree into a dangerous, wind-catching sail during a hurricane.
And finally, we explored how arborists use a highly specific toolkit, thinning, raising, reduction, and deadwooding, to biologically secure the structure before aesthetically shaping it to elevate your curb appeal.
It's a full life cycle approach.
It completely redefines the idea that the trees towering over us are just plants. I mean, they are dynamic, highly complex living infrastructure.
Which leaves us with a rather profound concept to consider.
Oh.
The guide notes that removing specific branches permanently alters the entire growth pattern and energy distribution of the plant.
Because it responds to every cut.
Exactly. When arborists intervene, when we strictly enforce the 25% rule to protect the roots, when we prune away competing stems to engineer a single solid spine, when we hollow out the canopy so hurricane winds can pass through harmlessly, we are intervening to save the tree from tearing itself apart in a rigid urban environment.
We're saving it from itself, in a way.
Yes. But by doing so, we are literally altering its biological destiny. The next time you look at a perfectly balanced, beautiful neighborhood tree standing strong and majestic after a massive storm, ask yourself, how much of what you're looking at is the spontaneous, wild work of nature? And how much is actually a carefully engineered, human-designed living sculpture?
A human-designed, living sculpture. That is a brilliant way to look at it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take this new perspective out into your yard, keep asking questions, and keep looking closer at the incredible, complex world growing right above your roof.